Every spring, most vegetable gardeners follow the same routine. Seeds are purchased, beds are tilled or loosened, soil is amended, young plants are carefully transplanted. Then the long process begins: watering, feeding, weeding, protecting, and waiting. For a few weeks or a few months, the garden produces food. Tomatoes ripen, peppers develop, greens are harvested. But as autumn arrives, something inevitable happens. The entire production system collapses. Plants die, beds empty, and the following spring, the entire process begins again. This is the annual vegetable garden model. It works. It feeds millions of gardens across the country. But it comes with a hidden cost. Every year requires the same investment of time, money, and physical effort. And every year that investment begins completely from scratch. Now compare that to a different type of garden. There's no tilling, no planting, no bags of fertilizer being opened. Instead, the gardener simply harvests. Asparagus spears snap cleanly from the soil. Rhubarb stalks are pulled from massive crowns. Leaves are clipped from plants that return every year without being replanted. This garden operates on a different model. A model that is older than modern vegetable gardening, a model that is more resilient and more efficient, and it is dramatically lower maintenance once established. Perennial vegetables, these are plants established one time, sometimes requiring patience, and then continue producing for years, sometimes decades. Their root systems grow deeper every season. They emerge each spring automatically. They tolerate drought better than annual crops, and many produce during the period when most gardens produce nothing. The quiet early spring window gardeners often call the hungry gap. We're going to walk through 15 perennial vegetables. Vegetables that can transform how a garden works long term, producing for 5, 10, 20, or even 30 years, from a single planting. But before we reach the plant list, there are 3 critical reasons these crops deserve a place in almost every vegetable garden. And understanding those reasons changes how you see the entire system. Now let's move into the next stage. We will explore the fundamental reasons why perennials are the future of gardening. Before looking at the plants themselves, it's important to understand why perennial vegetables work so differently from annual crops. There are 3 structural advantages that change the entire economics of a garden. The first is root depth. Annual vegetables build a root system every spring and abandon it when the plant dies in full. That means each growing season begins with a shallow root network that must rapidly explore the soil for water and nutrients. Perennial vegetables operate on a completely different timeline. A perennial plant in its 5th year has a root system that has been expanding underground for 5 full growing seasons. Those roots may reach 2 to 6 feet deep, accessing moisture and nutrients that annual plants simply cannot reach. The result is measurable: greater drought resilience, more stable yields during weather swings, and often higher nutrient density in the harvested crop. The second advantage is labor economics. Annual gardens require the same work every single year. Beds are prepared, plants are started or transplanted, soil is amended repeatedly. Weeds must be controlled from the beginning of each season. The workload resets every spring. Perennial vegetables shift that workload to the beginning of the system. Years 1 and 2 involve the majority of the effort: planting, spacing, and early establishment. But once the plants mature, the labor requirement drops dramatically. A mature asparagus bed, for example, often requires less than 20 minutes of maintenance per year for each 20-foot row. Yet during harvest season, that same bed produces fresh spears every day for several weeks. The garden becomes an investment that pays compounding returns over time. The third advantage appears during a very specific seasonal window. Gardeners often experience it without having a name for it. In most climates, there is a quiet period between late winter and mid-spring. Stored crops from the previous year are nearly gone. Overwintered greens are finishing their cycle, and newly planted spring vegetables have not yet begun producing. For 4 to 8 weeks, the garden produces almost nothing. Perennial vegetables solve this exact problem. Plants like asparagus, sorrel, perennial kale, good King Henry, and ramps emerge extremely early in the season. Their deepest harvests often occur precisely during this hungry gap, when the annual garden is still empty. The 15 plants in this guide are organized from the easiest and fastest to establish, counting down toward the most powerful long-term producers. And every one of them is available to gardeners through standard seed or nursery sources. But the first plant on this list appears almost before winter has fully ended, and that timing makes it one of the most valuable crops in any perennial garden. But that's only the beginning. The easiest perennial vegetable to establish, and one of the earliest foods available in spring, is sorrel. This cold hardy green emerges weeks before most vegetables begin growing. Unlike annuals, sorrel simply returns year after year. Its arrow-shaped leaves form dense clumps that produce for 10 years or more. It can even be harvested in its very first season. Its real distinction is the flavor, a clean, bright acidity often described as lemon-like, thanks to natural oxalic acid. This unique taste makes it a classic for soups and sauces, providing a fresh brightness that pairs perfectly with fish. Harvesting is simple. Remove the outer leaves and let the center grow. In your garden, one plant quickly becomes several. But the next plant on our list is even more unusual. It literally walks across the garden on its own. The next perennial vegetable behaves unlike almost any other plant in the garden. It doesn't rely on the gardener to spread it. Instead, it expands by planting itself. Also called the walking onion, This unusual perennial allium spreads through a remarkable propagation system. Instead of producing seeds at the top of its flower stalk, the plant develops clusters of small bulbs, known as topsets. As these bulbils grow heavier, gravity slowly bends the stalk downward. Eventually, the cluster touches the soil. Once the bulbils contact the ground, they begin rooting immediately. New onion plants emerge from that point. The colony gradually expands outward across the garden, appearing to walk in the direction the stalks lean. A single plant can quietly become a dense colony over several seasons without any intervention. And unlike many perennial vegetables, walking onions provide multiple types of harvest from the same planting. The first product is the green tops. These can be harvested throughout the growing season and used like scallions. Their flavor sits somewhere between green onion and garlic, stronger than a typical scallion but milder than raw garlic. The second harvest comes from the underground bulbs. By fall, the plant develops small onion bulbs beneath the soil. These are similar in size to pickling onions and carry a concentrated pungent flavor that works well in roasting or pickling. The third harvest comes from the topset bulbils themselves. These tiny onions can be replanted to expand the colony, or pickled whole for a sharp, garlicky condiment. One planting produces three separate products. Establishing walking onions is extremely simple. Plant the topset bulbils about 1 inch deep, spaced roughly 6 inches apart, either in early spring or fall. They establish quickly. Within a year, the colony begins reproducing on its own. And once established, it becomes a permanent feature of the garden, returning each spring, expanding slowly, and producing harvestable greens long before most annual onions are ready. For gardeners trying to fill the early season hungry gap, this reliability makes walking onion one of the most valuable perennial alliums available. But the next plant on this list offers something even more unusual. From a single perennial crown, it produces two completely different vegetables in the same season. Now here's where this changes. The next perennial vegetable was once a standard feature of both European cottage gardens and early American colonial gardens. Today, however, it is almost completely unknown to most modern gardeners. Its name is Good King Henry. What made this plant valuable historically is its ability to produce two completely different vegetables from the same plant during the same growing season. The first harvest appears in early spring. Before the plant produces its full leaves, it sends up tender young shoots from the crown. These shoots can be harvested and prepared in exactly the same way as asparagus. In fact, with the correct preparation technique, their flavor becomes surprisingly similar. The process used historically is called blanching. About 10 to 14 days before harvest, the crown is covered with an opaque container, often a clay pot or bucket. By blocking sunlight, the emerging shoots grow pale and tender. Without light, they produce less chlorophyll and develop a milder, more delicate flavor. Once the shoots reach 4 to 6 inches tall, the cover is removed and the shoots are harvested. Steamed or roasted, they behave remarkably like asparagus. But the plant's production does not stop there. After the early shoots are harvested, the plant begins producing large, broad green leaves. These leaves become the plant's second vegetable. They cook very similarly to spinach. Wilted in butter, added to soups, folded into omelets, or baked into savory pies and quiches, the leaves continue producing from late spring through early autumn, creating a long harvest window from a single permanent planting. Nutritionally, Good King Henry is also impressive. Agricultural studies have documented the leaves as having higher protein and iron levels than conventional spinach. Establishing the plant requires some patience. Seeds germinate best when sown in autumn, allowing winter cold to naturally break dormancy. Alternatively, gardeners can transplant divisions from established plants. Spacing of about 18 inches allows the crown to expand properly over time. During the first year, the plant focuses on building its root system. Light harvest may begin in the second year, with full production beginning in the third season. Once established, however, the plant becomes extremely low maintenance, a perennial vegetable that quietly produces 2 harvests every year. But the next plant expands the idea of productivity even further. Instead of 2 harvests, it produces 4 completely different edible products over the course of 8 months. And this is where perennial vegetables become truly remarkable. The next perennial vegetable is one of the most productive plants historically grown in traditional kitchen gardens. Yet today, many gardeners have never even heard of it. Its name is Lovage, a plant that truly stands out. Lovage is a tall, aromatic perennial herb that can reach 4 to 6 feet in height once established. In historical kitchen gardens, it was considered essential because it produced an exceptionally strong celery-like flavor, often more intense than celery itself. But the real reason Lovage earned its place in traditional gardens is the number of different products it provides. Across the course of a single growing season, a mature Lovage plant produces 4 separate edible harvests. The first product is the leaves. These appear early in spring and continue through autumn. Their flavor is concentrated. A single leaf can add the celery flavor equivalent of an entire stalk. Because of that intensity, Lovage leaves are typically used in soups, broths, and stews, where they add depth without requiring large quantities. The second product is the stems. When the stems are lightly blanched by covering the lower portion of the plant, they become pale, tender, and mild. These blanched stems can be eaten much like celery, chopped into soups or sautéed as a vegetable. The third harvest comes from the roots. In autumn, mature lovage roots can be dug and grated into stalks or braises. The flavor resembles celery root, but is far more concentrated, functioning almost like a seasoning ingredient. The fourth product appears at the end of summer. These are the seeds, appearing as summer comes to a close. Once dried, lovage seeds function as a powerful spice, often used as a substitute for celery seed in pickling blends or savory baking. Together, these four products create one of the longest harvest windows of any plant on this list, often extending from April through November. Establishing lovage requires a permanent location. Once mature, the plant becomes large and difficult to transplant. Spacing plants about 3 feet apart ensures enough room for their full growth. After establishment, however, lovage requires very little attention beyond basic watering and occasional harvesting. A single plant can produce culinary ingredients for nearly the entire growing season. But the next perennial vegetable on this list is something different entirely. It belongs to the Brassica family, the same family as broccoli and cabbage, and it produces its heaviest harvest during the exact window when most gardens are still completely empty. And this is where timing becomes critical. Among perennial vegetables, very few belong to the Brassica family, the group that includes broccoli, cabbage, kale, and mustard greens. Most brassicas are annuals or biennials that must be replanted every season, but one unusual species breaks that pattern. Its name is Turkish Rocket. Turkish Rocket is a hardy perennial plant capable of producing edible greens and shoots year after year from the same root system. What makes it especially valuable is its timing. Turkish Rocket begins growing extremely early in the season, sometimes pushing through soil that is still partially frozen. This timing places its peak production directly inside the period gardeners often struggle with most. During late winter and early spring, most annual vegetables have not yet begun producing. Storage crops from the previous year are nearly gone. Fresh greens are scarce. Turkish Rocket fills that gap with a burst of early season growth. The primary harvest comes from the plant's young shoots and tender leaves. These can be cooked in much the same way as broccoli rabe. Sautéed with olive oil, garlic, and a pinch of red pepper, the shoots develop a flavor that combines mild brassica sweetness with a subtle mustard-like warmth. The plant can also produce young flower buds, which resemble miniature broccoli florets. Harvested before they open, these buds can be steamed or roasted just like broccoli. However, Turkish Rocket performs best when gardeners understand its seasonal rhythm. Its strongest production occurs from late winter through mid-spring. As temperatures rise in summer, the plant naturally slows down, a characteristic shared by many brassicas that struggle in heat. In cooler weather, especially during early spring and sometimes again in autumn, the plant becomes productive once more. Establishing Turkish Rocket is simple. Seeds can be direct sown in spring or fall, and the plant quickly develops a strong perennial root system. Spacing of about 18 inches allows enough room for mature growth. Once established, Turkish Rocket often begins self-seeding. This gradually creates a small population of plants that maintain themselves with very little effort. It tolerates poorer soils and partial shade better than many brassicas, making it a reliable addition to a wide range of garden conditions. But the next plant on this list pushes perennial brassicas even further. Instead of producing primarily in spring, it can produce leafy harvests almost every week of the year, and its growth habit is unlike any kale most gardeners have ever seen. Now let's move into the next stage. Unlike standard kale, which grows as an annual or biennial, perennial kale continues producing leafy greens year-round when grown in the right zones. Varieties like Daubenton's kale and Taunton Deane grow as woody perennial shrubs. They produce continuously harvestable young leaves from multiple growing points without dying back in winter. In zones 7 through 10, perennial kale can be harvested every week of the year. Even in colder zones with minimal protection, it survives to produce greens well beyond the typical annual kale season. The propagation of perennial kale is uniquely different from standard varieties. Unlike standard kale seeds, perennial kale does not breed true from seed. The reliable method is stem cuttings. Take 8 to 10 inch shoots from actively growing side stems, strip the lower leaves, and place the cutting in well-draining potting mix under bright, indirect light. Roots develop in 3 to 5 weeks. Once established, the plant becomes a permanent, low-maintenance source of leafy greens. A single mature Daubenton's kale plant can yield 10 to 15 pounds of greens per year. 3 plants can supply a family of 4 continuously, eliminating repeated planting and labor typical of annual kale beds. Harvesting is simple. Remove the lower, mature leaves regularly while allowing top growth to continue. This maintains the plant's size and encourages new leaf production without damaging the main structure. Perennial kale also thrives in slightly partial shade and can tolerate moderate drought better than annuals. Its deep root system ensures consistent nutrient and water uptake, translating to tender, flavorful leaves even during less than ideal weather. Culinary applications are wide-ranging. Sautéed as a side dish, incorporated into soups or stews, or used fresh in salads when young and tender, it combines exceptional taste, nutrition, and continuous availability, making it one of the most valuable perennial vegetables for any serious American gardener. The next perennial on this list complements kale by providing intense flavor with minimal space, and it comes with a harvest protocol that ensures freshness and potency unmatched by store-bought alternatives, and this is where timing becomes critical. Horseradish is the quintessential perennial condiment crop. Once planted, it rarely leaves your garden. It spreads through root fragments. Any piece left behind regenerates a full plant. This self-regenerating habit makes it a low-maintenance, high-return perennial. The recommended management: harvest roots in fall to contain spread, while simultaneously producing your harvest. Fresh horseradish delivers intense sinus-clearing heat, a compound called isothiocyanate, which begins to degrade immediately once grated. Store-bought horseradish is pale and muted in comparison. Homegrown fresh root ensures maximum flavor and potency, highlighting why this perennial belongs in any serious kitchen garden. USDA zones 3 to 9 establishment harvest from year 1. Annual harvest window: fall through early spring for roots, leaves edible spring-fall. Planting: use root sections 6-8 inches long, pencil thick, planted horizontally 3 inches deep, spaced 18 inches apart. Each established plant produces multiple harvestable roots per season indefinitely. Its vigorous root system ensures consistent productivity with minimal intervention. Horseradish also provides early spring leaves, which can be added to salads or cooked lightly, extending its culinary value beyond the classic root. Because it's permanent and self-expanding, horseradish frees up space in the garden that would otherwise require yearly planting and re-establishment. This makes it labor efficient, complementing other perennial vegetables like asparagus and kale that reward patience with decades of harvests. For the gardener willing to dedicate a permanent space, horseradish provides both continuity and intensity in flavor. The next perennial vegetable on this list elevates your garden with dramatic architecture and a luxury harvest. Providing a visually striking, highly productive addition, Globe artichoke is as much a visual statement as a culinary asset. Its mature plants are architecturally dramatic, producing massive ornamental foliage while delivering one of the most prized perennial vegetables. The edible flower bud is the target harvest. Pick when it reaches golf ball to tennis ball size and the scales remain tightly closed. Once petals start opening, the bud loses tenderness and flavor. Regular harvesting is key. Regularly harvesting the primary central bud encourages secondary and tertiary buds along lateral stems. Producing 6 to 12 buds per season on a well-managed plant, it is a high-yield luxury crop. Globe artichokes thrive as perennials in USDA zones 6 through 11, or as annuals in colder zones 3 to 5. Expect a light harvest in year 1 with full production starting from year 2 onwards. The annual harvest window spans late spring through summer with an occasional fall flush. Its hungry gap performance is moderate, as production typically begins just after the primary spring gap. For colder zones 3 to 5, start seeds indoors 8 to 10 weeks before the last frost. Cold stratifying seeds in a refrigerator for 2 weeks improves first-year flowering significantly. Alternatively, heavily mulch crowns after the first frost to protect the roots through harsh winters. This extra protection ensures the perennial roots survive to push new growth in the spring. Beyond harvest, globe artichokes offer pollinator benefits. Allow 1 or 2 buds to bloom fully. Their flowers attract bumblebees, honeybees, and beneficial wasps, supporting your entire garden. This supports both the plant's reproduction and the surrounding garden's ecosystem health. Establish your plant in full sun with well-drained soil. This is the foundation for success. Once rooted, it requires minimal care beyond occasional mulching and harvest management. The combination of dramatic architecture and productivity makes globe artichoke a centerpiece. Steam primary buds with butter for a classic preparation, or blanch lateral buds for smaller dishes. Allow flowers to bloom to support pollinators while maintaining high-end garden aesthetics. This perennial is both a statement and a sustained source of high-quality food for your family. Next, we explore a native North American spring delicacy prized for its role in filling the hungry gap. Timing is critical. Ramps, also known as wild leeks, are a native North American perennial that represents one of the earliest harvests in spring. Highly sought after at farmers markets, ramps can sell for $15 to $20 per pound. Due to their unique flavor and limited seasonal availability, ramps, native spring perennial, USDA zones 3 to 7, establishment timeline 3 to 5 years for full production. Annual harvest window, March to May. Hungry gap performance, outstanding, primary early season crop. Ramps naturally thrive in rich, moist, deciduous woodlands. They prefer north-facing beds, leaf litter mulch, consistent moisture, and a dappled canopy shade that mimics their native habitat. Growing ramps from seed requires patience, 3 to 5 years to reach harvestable size. Alternatively, purchasing bulb divisions from specialty nurseries significantly shortens the timeline, reaching production in 2 to 3 years. Harvest carefully, cut only the leaves, leaving the bulbs intact. This allows the colony to expand naturally through division and seed, creating a permanent, self-sustaining patch. Culinary uses of ramps are broad. They can be sautéed whole, added to compound butters, or pickled. Their flavor sits between garlic and scallion, delivering a mild yet distinct pungency that elevates spring dishes. The woodland garden habitat is critical. The leaf litter acts as winter mulch, while the seasonal sunlight encourages early growth. Improper conditions slow growth and reduce longevity. Once established, ramps require minimal ongoing maintenance. Monitor moisture levels, prevent overharvesting, and allow the patch to expand gradually. Ramps fill the hungry gap precisely when other greens are scarce, making them both a culinary treasure and a practical early-season food source. The next perennial vegetable continues the theme of high-yield native North American perennials, offering both unmatched productivity and unique winter storage capabilities. Now let's move into the next stage. Sunchoke, also known as the Jerusalem artichoke, is a native North American perennial prized for its extraordinary tuber yield. One established clump can produce 20 to 40 pounds of tubers from just 10 square feet without intensive care. USDA zones 3 through 9, the harvest window lasts from fall through spring as tubers remain edible in the ground. During freeze-thaw cycles, inulin converts to fructose, naturally sweetening the tubers. Harvest after the first frost for the best flavor. Containment is essential. Plant in a raised bed with solid sides to prevent these vigorous plants from spreading uncontrollably. Sunchokes are a powerful prebiotic, feeding healthy gut bacteria and providing significant nutritional value. Their versatility is remarkable. Roasted, boiled, or mashed, they offer a sweet, nutty flavor that excels in winter. Practically maintenance-free sunchokes are a cornerstone of a productive perennial garden. Simply harvest and enjoy. Next, we explore a striking Andean tuber with a colorful transformation, continuing our journey of beautiful, productive crops. Oca is a perennial Andean tuber that thrives in North American gardens. It's hardy, pest-resistant, and incredibly productive. The secret to its flavor is sun sweetening. Sunlight transforms its tart oxalic acid into a mild, creamy sweetness. Each harvest is a spectacle of unique colors and patterns. When roasted, these colors deeply intensify. Roasted oca is a gourmet delight, perfect as a side dish or a sweet, starchy base for winter feasts. Oca is a self-renewing garden centerpiece. Establish it once and harvest its beauty and nutrition year after year. Next, we explore the architectural drama of the Cardoon. Subscribe to continue your journey into perennial gardening. Cardoon, Cynara cardunculus, is the wild ancestor of the globe artichoke and offers dramatic architectural foliage while producing edible, celery-like stems. It thrives as a perennial in zones 6 to 11, with marginal success in zone 5 under heavy mulching for winter protection. Establishment timeline: productive from year 1 as a transplant and becoming even more productive from year 2 onwards. The annual harvest window is in the fall for blanched stems and spring for young shoots, which are available during the hungry gap. The edible portion is transformed through blanching. In fall, gather all leaves together and wrap loosely. Use corrugated cardboard, burlap, or thick straw, securing with twine. Over 3 to 4 weeks, the interior stems change. They lose chlorophyll and bitterness, becoming tender, pale, and mild, ideal for classic Mediterranean preparations. Culinary applications are rich and traditional. Cardoon gratin uses blanched stems in a rich bechamel sauce. Topped with Parmesan, this is a classic. Other traditional dishes include bagna cauda, a Piedmontese garlic anchovy dip, or enjoy braised stems in stock with tomato and olives, highlighting both the plant's unique flavor and texture. Cardoon shares the pollinator benefits of the globe artichoke. Its purple flowers attract bees and beneficial insects. This supports your entire garden's ecosystem health. Its dramatic form can reach heights of 5 to 8 feet. This makes it both a visual centerpiece and a productive perennial crop that returns year after year. For planting, start from transplant space to allow for full growth. It is productive right from the first year. Yields increase each subsequent year. Remember, blanching must be repeated annually for those premium stems. Cardoon exemplifies the principle that perennial vegetables combine visual architecture with culinary utility. Its presence complements the garden while providing gourmet, long-term harvests with minimal maintenance. Next, we move from architectural stems to the quintessential garden standard: rhubarb, a plant with a massive lifespan. Its productive lifespan can exceed 2 decades, making it the ultimate perennial investment for any American gardener. Rhubarb, Rheum rhubarbarum, is the perennial with the longest productive lifespan in American gardens. Correctly managed crowns can remain productive for 20-plus years, making rhubarb a cornerstone of long-term perennial planning. It thrives in zones 3 to 8, requiring cold winters for dormancy. Zones 9 to 10 see diminished success. Establishment timeline: light harvest year 2, full production year 3 and beyond. Annual harvest window, April to June for the main flush, with occasional full production. Hungry gap performance outstanding. It is often the first harvestable crop of spring. The forced rhubarb technique produces a premium product. In late winter, cover dormant crowns with opaque containers. Emerging stems develop in darkness, becoming pale pink, tender, and sweeter, with lower oxalic acid levels. Forced rhubarb fetches $8 to $15 per pound at specialty markets, yet a homegrown crown produces this luxury product for free. Harvesting requires discipline. Never take more than 1/3 of the crown stems per season. Allow remaining foliage to photosynthesize, replenishing root reserves. Overharvesting in early years weakens the plant and shortens its lifespan. Harvesting properly ensures the plant stays healthy and productive for decades. Culinary versatility is exceptional. Pies, jams, compotes, or savory sauces. Forced rhubarb provides a luxury winter-spring crop, while the garden's annuals have yet to produce. Outdoor-grown rhubarb offers abundant harvests in early spring through early summer, filling the hungry gap effectively. Planting. Space crowns 18 to 24 inches apart in full sun or partial shade with well-draining soil. Mulch crowns to conserve moisture and suppress weeds. Correct site selection and patient harvesting maximize the productive lifespan. Rhubarb exemplifies the principle that perennial vegetables are investments in time, patience, and strategic planning. One well-established crown returns harvests year after year, reducing labor while increasing culinary and garden value over decades. The next perennial vegetable complements rhubarb by combining historical significance with modern gourmet appeal. Sea kale, the Thomas Jefferson perennial, capable of producing forced shoots for the hungry gap and ornamental leaves through summer. But that's only the beginning. Sea kale, or Crambe maritima, is a historical perennial cultivated by Thomas Jefferson and other early American gardeners. It produces a luxury restaurant-quality vegetable from a permanent bed, while also providing ornamental foliage through summer. Thriving in USDA zones 4 through 8, it is a hardy and reliable addition to any perennial food forest. While it takes 1 to 2 years to establish, it becomes exceptionally productive from year 3 onwards. Its hungry gap performance is outstanding. Forced shoots are among the premier early season crops available to gardeners. In late winter, cover the dormant crowns with any light-excluding container to begin the forcing process. The emerging shoots develop without chlorophyll, producing tender, pale stems with a delicate flavor. The taste is often described as a sophisticated blend of hazelnut and asparagus, a true gourmet treat. Harvest these shoots at 6 to 8 inches from the base, trimming carefully to preserve the health of the crown. These shoots fill the hungry gap, providing fresh greens weeks before your annual vegetables are even in the ground. Full production from a single plant begins around year 3, but with proper care, it can continue for over 20 years. If harvested judiciously, this crop is a long-term investment that pays dividends for decades. Beyond the forced shoots, the summer leaves and white flower clusters add both visual and culinary value to your garden. The plant's permanence is a major advantage, significantly reducing the labor involved in annual planting and soil prep. The striking blue-green leaves make it as much an ornamental feature as it is a productive vegetable. In summer, the plant erupts in clouds of white flowers, attracting pollinators and adding beauty to the landscape. Site selection is critical. Sea kale prefers full sun and well-draining soil where it can remain undisturbed. Mulching in spring maintains moisture, suppresses weeds, and provides the nutrients needed for a strong root system. Patience is key. Year 1 focuses entirely on establishment, allowing the root system to take hold. By year 2, you can enjoy light harvests, though the focus remains on building the plant's long-term strength. Year 3 onwards provides full forced shoot production, rewarding your disciplined approach with maximum yield. Sea kale exemplifies how perennials extend the season and reduce labor compared to demanding annual beds. Our final perennial completes the investment. The 30-year classic that defines perennial success, asparagus. Asparagus is the definitive perennial investment in any American vegetable garden. Properly established, it produces high-quality harvests for 25 to 30 years from a single planting. Unlike annual vegetables, asparagus requires minimal ongoing maintenance once mature, making it the cornerstone of a perennial garden. Thriving in USDA zones 3 through 8, the real production begins from year 3 onwards. Its peak production perfectly fills the early spring hungry gap. The key to a productive bed starts with correct technique and trench planting. Dig a trench 12 inches wide and 8 inches deep. Create a central ridge along the bottom for the roots. Drape the roots over the ridge so the bud sits on top, spacing crowns 18 inches apart. Staged backfilling encourages superior root establishment compared to single-step burial. Equally critical is the 2-year patience discipline. Do not harvest any spears in the first 2 seasons. Allow the plants to develop full fern canopies, building the reserves that sustain decades of production. For cold-hardy northern zones, Jersey Night and Purple Passion are top recommendations. In central zones, look toward Jersey Giant and Millennium for consistent yields. Southern gardeners should choose heat-tolerant varieties like Apollo or UC157. Maintenance is simple. In spring, apply 2 inches of compost mulch as spears emerge. Let ferns grow in summer, then cut them back after the first frost to reduce pest habitats. A mere 20-minute annual investment sustains your production for 3 decades. No other vegetable matches asparagus in harvest anticipation, longevity, and cumulative yield. It is the long-term backbone of the 15 perennial garden framework, maximizing labor efficiency. Enjoy decades of near-effortless harvests from a permanent, productive bed. Next, we'll explore how each U.S. zone affects perennial choices, ensuring your garden thrives regardless of location.